David Robinson raised his hand.
Can you read what David's?
He just raised his hand. I should chat with him though.
David Robinson raised his hand.
Is he supposed to be a candidate?
Can you read what David's?
Can you go onto YouTube and make sure we're live streaming? Is Dave Robinson supposed to be a panelist?
Yes.
He's a candidate.
There we go. Make sure that there's not any more your video and everything else that you won't show up on the screen.
Can you hear me, Nadia? I'd love to say hi. Ian, I don't think we've met, have we?
Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I'm looking forward to some conversation someday.
Absolutely.
Same
I've
with
enjoyed
you.
your articles in the past in the paper. You've had a few.
About 1,000, it seems.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sudbury Chamber, I'm looking forward to meeting you too. I'll shut up for a while, okay?
So,
Want to go on and say we'll start?
yeah, so we're just about a minute out. We'll be getting started shortly. We're just waiting for 7 o'clock to make sure our attendees have a chance to log in. So welcome to everybody. We'll get started formally in about a minute. Good evening, candidates and ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our virtual federal election fireside chat event for the Sudbury riding, hosted by the Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the Sudbury Real Estate Board and our bronze sponsor, Collage Boreal. I am Neil Milner, Chair of the Board of the Chamber and your moderator tonight. We hope tonight's meeting will assist you in casting your ballot for a member of the federal parliament on September 20th. So let us begin by introducing the candidates and outlining the rules of procedure for this event. In alphabetical order by surname, we have Vivian Lapointe, Liberal Party of Canada, David Robinson, Green Party of Canada, Ian Symington, Conservative Party of Canada, and Nadia Virilli, New Democratic Party of Canada. The candidates have been briefed on the rules of procedures for tonight's discussions, but I will outline them briefly for the audience. The following are the rules that will be followed this evening. Each candidate will be invited in alphabetical order to address the audience for 2 minutes with an opening statement. Their microphone will be muted at the 2-minute mark. Following the opening statements, the moderator will pose a series of questions to be answered by each of the candidates. These questions will concern national issues of importance to the business community. Though responses are not timed, we recommend keeping answers to a maximum of 2 minutes per question. The moderator, me, may engage with the candidate to request clarification on a response. Other candidates may also challenge a response. Candidates questioning and challenging one another must do so in a respectful and courteous manner. Candidates must not monopolize the question period. The moderator may give a time's up warning, and if the candidate does not heed this notice, their microphone may be muted. Following the moderator's questions, a public question period will be held where questions addressed to specific candidates will be posted. Any member of the audience wishing to have their question asked must type their question in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. The questions will be reviewed and the moderator will pose them to the appropriate candidate. Questions may be asked in both English and French. Questions in French will be asked by Chamber Director Joanne LeBreton. Bilingual candidates are encouraged to answer French questions in both official languages. For Anglophone candidates responding to a French question, Ms. LeBreton will translate their answers into French. Again, we recommend that the candidates keep their answers to a maximum of 2 minutes. Following the public question and answer period, each candidate in reverse alphabetical order will have the opportunity for a final 2-minute summation. Now, let's begin the night by calling on the candidates, beginning in alphabetical order by last name for their introductory remarks. So, Ms. Lapointe, please, your opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank the Chamber for organizing this event tonight. Je tiens à remercier la Chambre de commerce pour l'occasion de discuter de questions importantes ce soir. These are matters that pertain to everyone in Sudbury, from young people to seniors. And these matters are important to me because Sudbury is my home. It's where I grew up, it's where I grew my career, and where I raised my children. On me demande souvent pourquoi j'ai décidé de me présenter aux élections. I'm running for 3 reasons. First, my children's future and every child's future. Continuing the vital work of supporting businesses and people, and protecting our environment. My children, Connor and Aaron, they're in their 20s, and they've chosen Sudbury as their home. So it will be where they will raise their children and grow their careers. This is a driving and personal motivation for me to help young people. I want to help them realize their dreams of home ownership. I want to help women fully participate in the workforce through universal childcare. Les questions touchant à les aînés sont très importantes pour moi. My mother moved into our home where I cared for her. And caring for my mother taught me the importance of supporting our seniors with dignity. And I look forward to telling you how we will do that in this session. I support bold action on climate change. Sudbury is a recognized leader in that movement, and I want us to build on that leadership. I want to support local businesses to emerge stronger and be ready to create more jobs for Sudbury. I'm optimistic about Sudbury's future and the opportunity to build us back better. Better for our seniors, better for our families, better for our economy, and better for our environment. Together, we will move Sudbury forward. Ensemble, faisons avancer Sudbury.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe, for those comments. Dr. Robinson, your opening statement, please. Oh, you'll need to unmute.
Let's talk about what we all know. I'm not going to win this election. Ian's not going to win it either. I mean, the best thing conservatives can do, and Ian, I'm sure knows this, is vote for Nadia. That's the best way a conservative can prevent Trudeau from having a majority or possibly even get a conservative government. I'm not going to win. So that leaves us with Vivian and Nadia. They're both terrific candidates. They both do a good job in the constituency. They're both selling roughly the same package and shopping cart full of policies. So why would anyone vote Green? Well, I'm not here to get a party elected. I'm actually here to tell the truth about something that we have to deal with. I'm going to tell you a few things that I think you have to think about as voters. And then I'm going to tell you why it makes sense for you to vote Green. So the truth, really simple. BC is burning. Siberia is burning. Chile's burning. California is burning. Oregon's burning. Spain is burning. Turkey's burning. India is burning. At the same time, Afghanistan and California are in 10-year droughts, record-breaking droughts. Chile's in a record-breaking drought. Dakota is in an extreme drought. The Ukraine, Bangladesh, India are all suffering droughts. Do you know why? You know why. We all know why. This is climate change. I'm not mentioning floods. I'm not mentioning ice. I'm not mentioning polar bears dying. There's enough. We all know what's going on. We're headed for 30 degrees, not 30, 3 degrees warming for the globe on the current trajectory. 3 degrees. Canada is still claiming we can stop at 1.5 with our current policies. No scientist believes that. You know that Canada will get double the warming.
So Dr. Robinson, that is your time. So thank you very much for your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Dr. Symington, your opening statement, please.
Hi, it's Ian Symington. I'm the candidate for the Conservative Party. And with all due respect, Dr. Robinson, I'm here to win. So I don't know if you've been hanging out where your backdrop is, but Sudbury's got something exciting happening right now. I'm happy to be part of it. I grew up in Coppercliff. I'm a family doctor here in Sudbury. I've been here for the past 20 years. I'm a business owner. I appreciate the importance of a strong private sector in our city to drive growth and services. Our Conservative plan is Canada's recovery plan and will secure our future. We will secure jobs by investing in businesses and workers. We will secure accountability in government to clean up corruption. We will secure mental health. We will secure domestic production of medical products to keep us safe. And we will secure our economy by cleaning up wasteful spending, not critical spending, and restoring public finances. Thank you.
Symington. Dr. Verley, your opening statement, please.
Hi, David, thank you. Yay, vote Nadia. So I am Nadia Verelli. I'm coming to you from the territory of Robinson-Urine Treaty. As you know, I'm the NDP candidate for Sudbury in the traditional territory of Atipashik and Nashapik. I'm honored to represent Jagmeet Singh and all the New Democrats working hard to deliver change here and across Canada. I'm proud to highlight the land recognition in my opening address. Sometimes these can feel automatic, but reconciliation with Indigenous peoples needs to be active, intentional, and consistent. Working towards true reconciliation is one of the main reasons I'm here speaking with you tonight, because sadly, Trudeau's Liberals have gotten it so wrong. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting us and for taking a strong interest in this important, if unnecessary, election. As a professor, I looked at politics as a subject taught in the classroom and lived in the world. In the classroom, I challenged my students to look beyond their books, to find where the system lets people down and what can be done to make it better. Over the last several weeks, knocking on hundreds of doors and talking to people in all parts of town, I've come to further appreciate politics as a window into the soul of our community and our country. Sudbury, like much of our country, was built by the labor of hardworking people trying to make a better life for their children. My father, a tile setter, my mother, who worked in a window factory, taught me that to get ahead in life, you go to school and you go to work. With their support, their encouragement, and me working all kinds of jobs to make ends meet, I became the first person in my family to earn a doctorate. Coming home from graduation, my family greeted me at the door with an amaretto. Then my mom looked at me with that Italian mother look, gave me a knife, pointed it to the bushel of tomatoes and said, "Okay, Dr. Borelli, time to jar these tomatoes. We need sauce for the winter." She was planning ahead for the future, and that has always stuck with me. People in Sudbury are ready for better. They are ready to elect a government that will make life more affordable, that will tackle big polluters driving climate change, that will stand up for jobs and opportunity in our community, that will deliver real reconciliation.
So, thank you,
Sudbury,
Doctor.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your introductory remarks. Much appreciated, and as well as the questions that are coming in from our attendees are appreciated, but please make sure you put them in the Q&A and not the chat if it's still on. So I will now begin the question period. We'll call upon the candidates in a random order to respond to this question. Funding opportunities such as Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy were utilized by small and medium enterprises during the pandemic. How will your party either replace these programs or work to ensure that more funding and subsidies are available to businesses as they continue to operate through the pandemic? So back to you, Dr. Verrilli.
Thank you. Excuse me. So small businesses, as we know, are an important part of our community. Local shops like Tuco's Tacos, Jake's Diners, Gloria's, they give our community the character and keep our community running. And they need our support more now than ever. We saw how they were hit hard during the pandemic, some having to lay off workers, some even having to close up shop. We, the NDP, believe that they should have access to government services, helping them grow, innovate, and stay competitive. During COVID-19, we stood up for emergency small business aid. We stood up for lowering small business tax. We will continue to do so. We are the ones that urge the Trudeau government to continue the CERB, to continue with the small business aid. And we will make sure that small business wage and rent subsidies will continue until they are able to fully open. We will end gouging by credit card companies, by by limiting on how much they can charge for merchant fees. Small businesses shouldn't have to pay the price for this, and neither should you. We will continue to streamline access to government export services and make it simpler to break into foreign markets. The NDP is here to deliver. We make our promises. We are the ones that make true to our promises. Thank you.
Verrilli. Dr. Robinson, your response, please. You'll have to unmute it, Dr. Robinson.
I said I was hoping that Vivian would get the answer first, because both she and Nadia are going to say roughly the same thing, and both those parties in power will support roughly the same policies with regard to small businesses, because it's a desperate issue and we have to do it, and our governments generally have responded. So it doesn't matter which one you vote for, and this isn't an issue you're voting green for.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Robinson. Ms. Lapointe, your response.
So the Liberal government had to take action during COVID, or our country would have faced devastating job losses, business closures, and bankruptcies. The wage subsidies, rent subsidies that we offered to businesses kept businesses alive during the pandemic. We know that before the pandemic, Sudbury's unemployment rate was the lowest in recorded history, largely because the federal investments made in Sudbury and Northern Ontario, and we can get there again. Mining and mining equipment sales and service will be the future of Sudbury and Northern Ontario for decades to come. And the North continues to attract investments and jobs. And in the past few years, 4 mines have opened just 100 kilometers within Sudbury that are now generating $5 to $6 billion in investments. The first all-electric mine in Canada recently opened just north of Sudbury, and every piece of equipment in it was designed and built in Sudbury. That technology has applications for industry all over the world, and it's based right here in Sudbury. This means the world needs our resources more than ever, and the world needs these resources to be produced sustainably. That's where Sudbury and the North comes in.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Dr. Symington, your response, please.
It's Symington, thank you. Of course, we support small business, and we actually, our Conservative government supported the pandemic relief programs for businesses. That was an all-party thing. And what we're looking at is we have a Rebuild Main Street program. We're offering tax credits. We're talking investments into new business, or allowing people to invest to get new business off the ground. We're looking at loans of up to $200,000. So you ask how we're tying into the original funding. We're actually going to increase it from 60 to 200. There'll be some forgiveness based on COVID losses, but these are monies that we're putting into small businesses to rebuild Main Street, which is part of our platform. We also have lots of innovation funding to talk about the things that Ms. Lapointe is talking about, as far as making sure that Sudbury businesses are competitive. I was in a factory business on Monday, and I was fascinated with what goes on in our city. And I know that our businesses can help to move those things forward and not penalize or disrupt them with regulations and other issues.
Thank you, Dr. Symington. I'll now open the floor to some constructive and courteous and respectful debate on the issue. So if anyone wants to kick it off, please feel free to raise your hand. And again, we'll keep it to about 2 minutes. All right, so I saw Dr. Robinson raise his hand, so the floor is yours to start, Dr. Robinson.
What's happening? Do you have a riot happening there?
It's just street noise from outside.
Okay. I want to thank Vivian for emphasizing the mining supply and services cluster. That's an area, I guess you all know, that I did the research that identified it and did the campaigning that got it recognized. We have huge opportunities in this area. I don't think we are putting enough effort into it by far. I think both provincially and the federal government have failed to some extent to promote it as fast as we can. I do think that the recent $50 million that went to one of our research organizations here, which I helped write the original draft of, is really important, and it's not enough. So I want to thank Vivian for emphasizing that point, and I'm glad both she and Nadia will take it, either she or Nadia will take it to Ottawa and promote it hard.
All right, would anyone like to respond or add further comment? I see Dr. Verley's hand up. Go ahead, Dr. Verley.
Thank you. You can call me Nadia, by the way. So just on response to Vivian, so the Liberals' comment, carbon fees rebated to individuals, not to small businesses, and there are no supports to help them transition into a new green economy. The NDP, we will fix that by helping small businesses adapt, and we will fix it also by training workers into the new green economy. And I agree with David, and congratulations on receiving the research fund. We are poised to make something here with our nickel basin in Sudbury, and I agree we need to push this more.
Thank you. Anyone else?
David has his hand up.
Dr. Robinson, is your hand still up or is it just up from previous?
Mute.
You'll need to unmute. Okay, it's down. All right. So if nobody else has anything, we'll move on to the next question. Many small enterprises in the hardest hit sectors, including tourism, hospitality, and retail, will not recover from the pandemic until public health restrictions are lifted and economic activity returns to normal. What will your party do to support these businesses that are such an essential part of our economy? The floor goes to Dr. Symington. Your response, please.
In specific to that question, we do have a platform piece for restaurants. One of it would be to encourage, and of course this is while we're safe to do so, would be to encourage dining from midweek, typical slow times. We're going to be offering tax credits and rebates to help get Canadians out of their doors back into restaurants to support these places. It's quite an innovative thing. It's an interesting thing, and it's looking at essentially promoting people to get out and giving them half price or I believe it's 25% off their bills depending on the time of day. So it's looking to increase the volume for the restaurants to get them back on their feet sooner. And that's our plan for the restaurants and the hospitality.
Ms. Lapointe, your response, please.
So the Liberal government has been very driven by making sure that we open up in a very safe manner for all Canadians. Specific to the tourism industry, we invested $425 million to provide targeted support to Canada's tourism industry. We also launched Canada Community Revitalization Fund, and that was to invest in shared and inclusive public spaces, help stimulate local economies, and to bring Canadians back together once it is safe to do so, including 1.5 million right here in Sudbury. And what we saw from that would be youth basketball courts, Delky Dozy track, as well as some investments in Bell Park. And we've launched a $700 million jobs and growth fund to position local economies for long-term growth by transitioning to a green economy, fostering an inclusive recovery, enhancing competitiveness, and creating jobs in every corner of the country, and that includes right here in Sudbury.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Dr. Verrilli, your response, please.
Thank you. So as I said, we support the NDP, we support small businesses, we understand the importance that they bring to our community. And as our economy and the global economy slowly bounces back from the pandemic, we have an opportunity in Canada and in Sudbury to create and protect good jobs. And we are committed to putting Canadian workers at the center of this robust strategy and to drive innovation. We will create and protect good jobs now and into the future. How? We'll strengthen and modernize the Investment Canada Act. We will scrap Invest in Canadian Agency and create iCanada, which will be beneficial to the tourism and to the hospitality industry. We will stand up for workers when their jobs are being threatened. We show up at the picket lines. We were the ones that were there when Laurentian was being dismantled. The Liberal government talks about jobs that were created, that were brought here in Sudbury. However, they sat idly by and did nothing when Laurentian lost over 200 jobs. And these are just at Laurentian. The ongoing impact of the job losses here at at Sudbury and at Laurentian will be felt for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Verley. Dr. Robinson, your response, please.
The main thing that would make a difference in the short run on the question that you asked, which is the effect of the current state of COVID, will be vaccine passports, getting people freer to move around. People have been afraid to do it. It's going to happen anyway because now the public's demanding it. The government, whatever shape it's in, is not going to respond with much new before late December. And by then, we're going to know something what we don't know now. We really don't know the progress of this event. So it's really kind of silly to try and make other predictions. Let's get a vaccine passport. And then go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. So I will open the floor for, again, some open debate. Just raise your hand and all right. We'll move on to our third question. So housing supply issues have a fairly significant impact on long-term housing affordability. What can the federal government do to help with housing supply issues across the country? And so the floor goes to Dr. Robinson. Your response, please.
Okay, none of the parties, including mine, have a coherent policy on housing. I'm an economist, as I'm sure everybody knows. The problem in housing is simply that there's lots of money in the system as a result of a long period of expanding money, and that's bidding up prices like mad. And people who are wealthier get lower interest rates and more access to capital, which means that home ownership is moving to the rich, and it will continue to do so. Meanwhile, financial corporations are putting their money into urban land and farmland as fast as they can because those are safe assets. As long as you can make capital gains on land, we will not solve the housing program, the housing problem. We can make some small changes, and I'll make some strong suggestions if you want them, but it takes more than my 2 minutes to really describe a coherent policy. One of the things that we have to do is stop selling any public land to private developers, because when it goes to private developers, then people start collecting capital gains on it, and it is a speculative asset. And when it's a speculative asset, it's like going to the casino to make money. People rush into that particular gamble. It's almost guaranteed because everyone else is rushing in. We cannot solve this problem without getting land capital gains out of the system. And I want to say that the Liberal government made the tiniest step in that direction when it suggested that it's going to tax some of the capital gains on houses that are flipped within 1 year. Now, that's a very, very timid little step in that direction, but it does break open for the first time among the major parties the possibility, and this includes the NDP, Nadia, of admitting what the real problem is.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Dr. Symington, your response, please.
Sure. In regards to housing, there's a shortage, there's an affordability crisis. And when I look at affordability crisis in housing, I think you could probably fix that 3 ways. One is to bring the house costs down. The other is to increase wages to make it more affordable for people to buy the more expensive housing. And the other is to secure financing. So I want to say, first and foremost, to Dr. Robinson, we will not tax capital gains on principal residence. That is our position straight up. And I hope all homeowners in the city are listening to me. I hope all homeowners in the 905 area code somehow get a hold of this message, because it's extremely important to those people who have savings tied up into their houses. Our government wants to build 1 million homes. in the next 3 years. We actually, again, Dr. Robinson, I apologize, but we want to release or look to release up to 15% of federal land holdings. The federal government holds the most land and buildings in the country. It's about 37,000 buildings. We're looking at releasing that for private residences to address the housing shortage in a shorter period of time. That's under study. That's not a promise. And to allow 7 to 10 year mortgage plans on, above the 5 year to get more financial and more stability for people taking loans. And again, we want to continue to rebuild our economy so there's more money in the system for people to afford the houses.
Thank you, Dr. Symington. Dr. Verrilli, your response, please.
Thank you. David, we do have a plan. Maybe after this, you and I can go for a coffee and we'll talk about it in more detail. So our plan, we see this, the cost of living year after year has grown slowly because of the pandemic, but now it is accelerating. So we're seeing this in the cost of the grocery stores, but more importantly, we're seeing this in the cost of housing. It's interesting to me that Dr. Symington and Dr. Robinson are talking about capital gains. We're worried about people buying their first homes. We're worried about people being able to afford rent. And what we've seen is that these prices have gone up and the Justin Trudeau Liberals haven't done anything about it. We do have a plan. We will address the supply and demand. We will keep we will keep homes affordable. So for those that want to buy their first home aren't priced out. For those that are looking to rent, we see it every day with our students, David. Our students are priced out of the rental market, and that shouldn't be. The NDP were committed to building 500,000 homes, affordable homes for people who want to get into the housing market. We will tax the foreign buyers by 20% to ensure that they aren't competitive, that they're not driving costs up. So that is our plan. Our plan is for the people. And again, we will deliver this plan.
Thank you, Dr. Verrilli. Ms. Lapointe.
I'll start by saying that all Sudburyans deserve a safe and affordable place to call home. Seniors shouldn't have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. And I talked earlier about my kids. They're in their mid-20s. They will be first-time home buyers. And I want to be able to help them realize that dream. So the Liberal government has tabled a plan called A Home for Everyone. And that plan eliminates the 3 biggest barriers right now to home ownership. And that is affordability, availability, and a level playing field. So first, we're going to unlock home ownership. Renters will have the ability to become owners through rent-to-own programs. We're going to help young people save for a down payment faster. We're going to reduce the monthly cost of mortgages, and we're going to double the home buyer's tax credit. These incentives represent up to $30,000 for young first-time home buyers. We're also going to build more homes. We need to have more homes available, and we know that. And we're ready to build or repair 1.4 million homes in 4 years. That's going to increase the supply of homes. It's going to create jobs, and it's going to grow our middle class. And lastly, we're going to protect the rights of Canadians. We're going to table a home buyer's bill of rights. We're going to make the process of buying a home fair, more open, and more transparent. And that will ensure homes are for people and families. We're also going to put a ban for 2 years. We're going to freeze new foreign ownership. That will give us time to develop proper policies to ensure that our interests of Canadians are well covered in these policies.
Thank you. All right. So I'd like to open the floor for further discussion on that issue. Please raise your hand if you have follow-up you'd like to make. Dr. Verrilli.
So my question is two-pronged. The first one for Dr. Symington, sorry. You said that one way of addressing this is to bring wages up. Are you now committing to a minimum wage for workers? And for Vivian Lapointe, excuse me, sorry. You say your plan includes freezing new foreign ownership for the next 2 years. Can you tell us how you plan on doing that? Thank you.
Dr. Robinson, go ahead, please.
I just want to point out that all three of the things that Ian Symington proposed will make the situation worse. It's just simple as that. None of the proposals are going to have a long run effect. I do like the idea of freeing up a large amount of federal land, providing it goes to cooperatives and publicly owned housing, primarily for low-income people at this point. Anybody who puts more money into the system with cheaper mortgages bids up the price of housing. End of the story. Please don't argue with me. I've got the economics coming out my yin-yang to prove that. It's over. You put more money in, as the Conservatives have proposed, with mortgage supports and so on, you make it worse. You have to produce more housing, which means freeing up some land. It means changing urban zoning regulations, which really restrict densification. Major problem right there. And it means greatly assisting cooperatives and public housing to expand. That's what keeps housing prices down in Europe. It is not cheap mortgage money. It is not support for new buyers.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Oh, sorry. Did anyone else have a comment? Okay, seeing no hands. We'll now take questions from our audience members. If you have a question for a candidate, please put it in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen and address it to the candidate of your choice. So this question is for Dr. Symington and Ms. Lapointe. What is your party's plan to encourage immigration and especially Francophone immigration? The current government's targets are not being close to met to Canada, to Ontario, and to Greater Sudbury in particular. Your response, please, Ms. Lapointe.
So we know that we need more people moving to the north. And businesses have told me that I have been visiting over the past few months that they need more labor workers. So the Rural and Northern Immigration Project has been highly successful for the north and in particular for Sudbury. We fast-tracked and we cut the red tape for immigrants through the Rural and Northern Immigration Partnership. And in 1 year, we brought 100 new people to Sudbury. We also created the highly successful pathway for hundreds of asylum seekers in Sudbury working in frontline healthcare. And I had the opportunity to meet with the Nigerian community of Sudbury, where they talked about how important that pathway was and how now they are creating a very rich community. And we have been able to help increase the number of frontline workers on the front lines helping patients.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Dr. Symington, your response, please.
Thank you, Mr. Milner. Could you just repeat the original question, please?
Certainly. What is your party's plan to encourage immigration and especially Francophone immigration, as the current government's targets are not close to being met, to Canada, to Ontario, and to Greater Sudbury in particular.
So our immigration policy is based around skilled immigration. We're looking to definitely increase our labor force, our workforce with skilled workers. We're looking to increase our frontline workers, similar, I suppose, to the Liberal platform, as Vivian just pointed out. We're looking at getting PSWs who have skills in the area, because we know we're looking to ramp up that area with long-term care homes and new standards. So our basic immigration policy is to help get new workers and get them their credentials, whether they be professionals or other workers that are essential to our needs and their needs. And that's essentially our policy.
Thank you, Dr. Symington. So the next question for the audience is to Dr. Symington. Will you remove the requirements for ethanol in gasoline? The production of ethanol goes against good environmental stewardship.
Yeah, this is a question I didn't expect. I'm not sure exactly where to go with this. I suppose burning food for fuel is something that bothers people. I think it's a little bit cleaner than our old regular gas, so we've come a little bit on the advancement there. But I don't know how much further to go with this. I'll maybe put it over to Dr. Robinson.
Dr. Robinson, unmute yourself, please, sir.
Ian is right. It's silly to be burning food. More to the point, though, it's silly to be burning anything in an internal combustion engine at this stage. Any responsible program is talking about phasing out the internal combustion engine completely by 2030 and making no sales permissible after, say, 2025. The fact of the matter is we have to kill the fossil fuel industry globally. That means killing it in Canada. We're talking about destroying the world on our current path. And I hate to sort of raise a subject that all of you want to avoid, but those are the actions that we need. If you don't have kill the fossil fuel industry in your platform, you're not even in the conversation. That's why people ought to be voting green at this point, because voting green right now says to the parties, we want more action. Voting for their grab bag of policies doesn't say anything clear. So I'm suggesting people say, we want more by voting green. That's what that message is, and that's the message we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I'm just waiting for my next question from the audience to come up. So this one is for Ms. Lapointe. What is the Liberals' exact plan to recover from the pandemic?
I apologize. I keep moving my mouse. So we know that the pandemic took a significant toll on all Canadians. And we brought together 33 times the federal, provincial, and territorial first ministers to coordinate the measures that kept Canadians safe. $8 of every $10 spent on managing the pandemic came for the federal government. And it's actually closer to $9 on every $10 for Ontario. So we do We do have an economic recovery plan. It is important that we navigate our way safely through there, and we will continue to do that. And we know that we need to continue doing and that will continue to keep the supports that Canadians depend on as we make our way out of the pandemic. The supports that Canadians depended on to get through that were conceived and implemented by the federal Liberal government, and we will continue to keep our Canadians safe throughout it all. Some of the things that we've done around COVID certainly is that we met our vaccine goal 2 months earlier ahead of schedules, and we made seniors our top priority for vaccines. 70% of Canadians now that are eligible are fully vaccinated. We've mandated vaccines for federal employees, as well as the need, if you choose to travel, you will need to be fully vaccinated. We negotiated the Safe Restart Agreement with over $19 billion to support provinces and territories as we restart the economy. We've also announced the Safe Return to Class Fund, that we want to ensure that when our children are going back to class, that they're doing that in a safe way, and that provinces are able to do some improvements to ventilation systems there. We've amended the Income Tax Act to allow EI beneficiaries to make claims for childcare expenses and disability supports deductions as well, just like COVID-19 income support recipients. And we boosted the Canada Child Benefit payments, $2 billion in extra support during the pandemic.
Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. So for the next question from the audience, again to Ms. Lapointe, should profit be allowed in long-term care homes?
Caring for our seniors in long-term care is vitally important. And I will tell you that after caring for my mom at home, we then moved her to St. Gabriel's Villa, where she could get the constant care that she required. So this is a question and a subject that's very close to me. Report after report shows that it is a lack of standard that is the issue, and the lack of enforcement around what few standards exist. And that is why the Liberals plan to create and work closely with provinces and territories to create a national standards for caring for seniors in long-term care is very important and will help towards improving the quality of care. We've also committed to investing and graduating 50,000 more personal support workers across Canada. I tell you, I see those workers at St. Gabe's. They are incredible. They take great care of my mom, and they need to be supported. We're also going to increase their wages. And as we negotiate with provinces and territories around that, the minimum wage that we will accept for personal support workers will be $25.
Thank you again, Ms. Lapointe. Just waiting for the next question to come up on the screen. The first one there, okay. Dr. Symington, how will the Conservative Party effectively address climate change?
Yeah, well, thank you. We do have a plan. I think a lot of people think we're shirking this duty or not interested in this. We are interested in this. And Erin O'Toole, our leader, has made it clear that climate change is definitely something that we want to address. I think we're going to be very careful with carbon pricing versus carbon tax. I think we're not in agreement with the current carbon price and our carbon tax, where we pay a carbon tax, it gets redistributed to the people after 10-15% gets kept in the general coffers of the government. So what we'd like to do is set up a low carbon savings account that would then take the pricing on carbon and put it back into account where people can actually use it to reduce their own carbon footprint. They would use green choices to do this. And that's our piece for provinces that don't have anything set up. We also have realistic EV expectations. And again, I know that Dr. Robinson would like everything done very quickly, but I don't think it's quite possible to get that done in that time frame. We're looking at 30% of light vehicles by 2030 being phased out. We're looking at obviously EVs being very good for Sudbury and the mining industry and the high grade nickel that we produce here for the batteries. And another thing that we're looking at, and no one really talks about this, is carbon capture and storage. And this is something that's being explored. We're looking at putting up to $5 billion in figuring out how we can somehow capture the carbon either at source, or this is not planting a tree, this is capturing at source, this is capturing from the air directly. And we've seen this with Inco and Vale. We've seen the new stacks that are going up that capture on site. I know it's not carbon dioxide, but it would be similar technology to that, so that we don't have to put ourselves into desperate times, yet we can still transition off fossil fuels at some point when it's safe to do so, and in a balanced approach for all Canadians.
Thank you, Dr. Symington. So I'm going to turn the mic over to our director, Joanne LeBreton. The next question is for Ms. Lapointe, and it's in French. So Joanne, welcome.
Thank you, Neil. Which question am I asking? Okay, here we go. The question that came in French was: un rapport publié par l'Institut des politiques du Nord mentionne que pour maintenir le pourcentage de connaissance du français à son niveau actuel dans le Grand Sudbury, il faut entre 32,5 et 35,6% de tous les nouveaux arrivants qui s'installent à Sudbury qui peuvent s'exprimer en français. Le cible actuel du gouvernement fédéral de 5% d'immigration francophone est donc largement insuffisant pour maintenir le poids démographique des francophones dans notre communauté. Comment comptez-vous travailler avec les partenaires communautaires francophones pour atteindre environ 33% d'immigration francophone dans le Grand Sudbury? Je vais répéter la question en anglais. So translated to English, for those of you who couldn't follow that, a report published by Northern Policy Institute mentions that to maintain the percentage of knowledge of French at its current level in Greater Sudbury, we need between 32.5 and 35.6 of all new residents to our community to be able to communicate in French. The federal government is currently only targeting 5% Francophone immigration to our area, and therefore that's insufficient to maintain the current percentage of Francophones in our community. How do you expect to work with Francophone community partners to bridge this gap?
Merci pour la question. Je pense que c'est très important que Sudbury soit une communauté accueillante. Et le gouvernement libéral a un plan pour nous aider. L'initiative des communautés francophones accueillantes représente 14 zones qui ont été sélectionnées pour accueillir et soutenir les nouveaux arrivants d'expression française, pour s'assurer que ceux-ci se sentent les bienvenus dans leur nouvelle communauté. Et je suis très fière d'informer les gens ici ce soir que Sudbury a été choisi comme une des 14 communautés. Donc, ça fait preuve à les efforts et les travaux qu'on a faits ici à Sudbury envers l'immigration. Donc, nous avons, les enjeux sont très importants, mais nous avons des cibles et des objectifs très concrets suivis avec un plan qui va nous aider.
Ferais-tu aussi peut-être un sommaire en anglais aussi pour ceux qui sont anglophones?
Oui, certainement, mon plaisir. So we know that new people will create new demand for local products and services. There is a program that is where certain communities are designated to be welcoming communities of Francophone immigrants. There are 14 communities across Canada, and I am very, very proud to tell you that Sudbury is one of those 14 across Canada. We are one of those welcoming communities. So it speaks to the work that we have been doing on increasing immigration here in Sudbury, as well as most specifically to reach the Francophone immigration targets here for Sudbury.
Merci beaucoup, Viviane.
Thank you. Thank you both for that question and that answer. So our next question, is to, again, Ms. Lapointe. In many opening statements, it is mentioned that a high priority goal is to keep businesses growing in Sudbury. How will your party ensure we have the necessary skilled labor to fill the much needed gaps?
So first, I will talk about what we're doing to ensure greater job growth in Sudbury. So the first thing I want to talk about is what we've done with FedNor. So when the Liberal government first came into 2015, FedNor's budget had been slashed to the point where it was $40 million. We have now restored FedNor's budget to $100 million. We've more than doubled that. We've also made FedNor a standalone independent agency. That will allow us to a greater range of independent decision-making to meet the economic needs and drivers of Sudbury and the North. Those are key components to job creation here for Sudbury. We've also increased incredible mining exploration. Exploration amounts now are higher than they've ever been. And I'll also remind people here this evening that prior to COVID, Sudbury's unemployment rate was the lowest on record in recorded history. So our Liberal government has made the appropriate investments for job creation in Sudbury, and it will continue to do so.
Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Symington. What are the Conservative plans for addressing the opioid crisis in Canada and more specifically Sudbury?
Thank you. We have a fairly detailed plan for this. It's obviously very close to all our hearts with the crosses for change that we drive by every day when we go downtown. There are lots of issues surrounding opioid. It happens to be International Overdose Awareness Day, so this is a very timely question. In our government, we look for mental health, homelessness, and opioids tend to be intertwined and very closely related. What we are proposing to do is build people up, and it's all about basic needs first, and then we get into treatment, and then we get into recovery or getting our lives back for our sufferers. Our plan is to put $325 million into 1,000 in-house treatment beds. We want to put 50 recovery community community centers for mental health. I've said this week already. Sudbury will be the recipient of this. We know that our situation in Sudbury is worse than most, if not all, of Canada per capita. We are going to put $1 billion in over 5 years for funding for Indigenous mental health and drug treatments to be initiated by Indigenous people, not in a paternalistic way. We are increasing naloxone kits to make sure that everyone in Ontario has one free. And we're also supporting grassroots community groups that are working on the ground in our existing community. And my eyes have been opened as to how many of these are actually functioning in the Sudbury area that need support.
Thank you, Dr. Symington. The next question is for Dr. Verley. You mentioned the impact of the restructuring of Laurentian on local businesses. Can you say a little bit more about how about this impact and how it can be mitigated?
I think it's an important question, an issue that continues to face our community here in Sudbury. So early reports predicted that the loss of jobs at Laurentian would cost Sudbury $100 million. We're seeing now with reports coming out that Laurentian's enrollment for first year has dropped by 30%. This is not a one-time drop. This will carry on for the next 4 years. We know that students are customers, they are purchasers, they are the ones going to local shops, local restaurants. With a 30% drop, we know that that money is gone. That will further hurt small businesses here in Sudbury. Further, we also know with the number of programs that have been cut at the University of Laurentian, as well as with the Federated University, students were left in the lurch. Students who weren't able to complete their programs have left Sudbury. I have students who could no longer complete their programs here and have decided to attend. I have one in Guelph, one went to Nipissing, another one in Toronto, and that's just the 3. This is money lost for the community. In addition, when Laurentian lost those jobs, these were good paying jobs. These are jobs that will not come back. These are jobs that have left our city. These are people who now have to leave our region in order to continue their life or their career in academia, which means they left with their family. This is all money lost to the community. Also, we were talking about the mining industry and how Sudbury is the example. We led the regreening. We can export this technology, but we just cut the environmental studies program at the University of Laurentian in the School of the Environment. We're talking about bringing Francophone immigrants here to Sudbury, and I think this is a great idea. We are a welcoming community. We just cut, 24 programs of French language. We are not committing ourselves. Our government hasn't been there for us to deal with. We have a Liberal government that wants to bring jobs to Sudbury. We have a Liberal government that wants to bring more Francophone immigrants. Well, in order to bring people to Sudbury, we need to provide them jobs. We need to provide them with an ability to pursue an education at home, an affordable education at home. So the impact of the economy, the impact on the economy from the Laurentian cuts, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Verley. The next question is for Dr. Robinson. What would your party do to restore Laurentian University?
Great question. You're talking about provincial jurisdiction, of course. My personal view, and my party does not have a policy on this, simply because it's a very local issue. But my personal view is we need a Francophone university here that can support and help drive the Francophone community. Without building up those institutions, we're not going to get Francophone immigration into the region, period. And we really have to develop the community, support the community. It turns out that exporting education to Africa and Asia and Southern Ontario is one of our big export industries. So what do we do about that? The province has to focus on, first of all, the strengths up here. Secondly, on the province, I'm saying, because we don't have much leverage here and the federal government has not much leverage. First of all, building up Laurentian as the center for mining research and mining supply and services, because they tend to focus only on the mining and not on the services part for Canada. we've got the leading opportunity here, and it's absolutely central for environmental development because mining is what's going to make it possible to produce all of those devices that let us get off of the fossil fuels. So it's absolutely crucial that we invest a whole bunch in Sudbury's mining capacity, and the federal government can do that one for sure. It can support a new Francophone university for sure. So those would be my first two moves. There are several others. Building up the environmental program for the northern regions of the country can be done here. And that's something that is legitimately a federal interest. There are a couple of other interesting ones, but let me stop there because I've listed three really quite substantial items.
Thank you for that response, Dr. Robinson. Ms. Lapointe, reconciliation is the responsibility of the federal government. This is a very important issue for many Canadians. The Liberal platform does not appear to address this. What is your plan for reconciliation?
Like other Canadians across the country, I followed the tragic and devastating situation unfolding this spring and summer as burial sites of children were uncovered in former residential schools. I can tell you that as a mother, I empathize with the sufferings that Indigenous peoples, communities, and survivors have been subject to. Survivors of residential schools should be compensated, and they will be. Is our work done on truth and reconciliation? The answer is a big, resounding no. The Liberal government has invested more in Indigenous communities than any other government in the history of Canada. Since 2015, more than $45 billion has been earmarked for Indigenous programming, most of it for closing social, economic, and health gaps. 77 land claims have been successfully negotiated for the North. There's been an historic investment of $18 billion to improve the quality of life for people living in Indigenous communities. And we've invested $1.4 billion for construction and renovation of schools. We've committed to rebuilding our relationship with Indigenous peoples with over 150 active negotiation tables, with more than 500 communities representing over 1 million Indigenous people to support their visions of self-determination. We've signed a proposed Anishinaabe Nation governance agreement and launched the Anishinaabe First Nations community approval process. If ratified, the Anishinaabe Nation governance agreement would be the first Indigenous self-government governance agreement in Ontario. Certainly, the boil water advisories have been an issue at the forefront for everyone. 110 boil water advisories have been completed. There are 33 communities remaining, and all of the funding and the resources have been secured, and we will continue until all boil water advisories have been completed. We are committed to addressing the historical wrongs, and we will continue our work on this.
Thank you. I see that Dr. Burley has had her hand raised, seeing as this is such an important topic. Did you have something to add, Dr. Burley?
I do. Thank you. I just want to raise some issues. We're still sitting on the TRC. The boil water advisory, it's been 6 years. And instead of dealing with it and fulfilling his promise, 2015, moved the deadline to 2026. That's 11 years after he promised it. The Trudeau government is still taking the St. Anne survivors to court, appealing the decision, forcing survivors to relive the trauma. In the first 3 years of Justin Trudeau as government, he spent nearly $100 million taking Indigenous peoples to court. This is not reconciliation. They're not dealing with inadequate housing and services of Indigenous people living on and off reserves. They're still not fulfilling their promise or implementing the Jordan Principle. I'm sorry, this is not reconciliation. The NDP, we are committed to reconciliation. We are committed to sitting down with Indigenous communities, talking to them, negotiating nation to nation. We are committed to self-government and to self-determination. Thank you.
So I'd like an opportunity to respond.
Absolutely.
In 2016, there were 156 boil water advisories in First Nations communities across Canada. As I mentioned previously, we now today have 33 communities that are still have boil water advisories, but we have secured the funding and the resources. And there is a plan in place and a budget commitment for every one of those 33 communities. To be clear, the federal government is not taking First Nations children to court. Settlements are done. Money for the victims have been set aside. The courts are now considering arguments for how the settlements and payments will be made. Justice Sinclair concluded in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that these horrors compounded over generations, and it will take generations to truly understand and atone for them. And he does believe we are on the right path.
Thank you. The next question goes to Dr. Verrilli. Can you tell us how pharmacare and dental care will help small businesses?
Simple and quick answer, dental care and pharmacare will save employers $600 per employee, meaning they won't have to worry about whether or not their employees can afford their prescription medication, meaning they don't have to worry about their bottom line. Those savings can enable them to grow their small businesses. Those savings can enable them to hire more people. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Joanne to answer to pose the next question, please.
Sure, thanks, Neil. So this question came in French. The question will be directed to Ian. So I will read the French question and then the English version of it as well. So the person asking the question asked it. Est-ce que vous êtes en faveur du transfert de l'ensemble des programmes francophones, ceux coupés par la Laurentienne et ceux que la Laurentienne souhaitait garder, de l'Université Laurentienne vers l'Université de Sudbury? So in English, are you in favor of the transfer of the Francophone programs, both those that were cut by Laurentian University and those that Laurentian wants to keep from Laurentian University to the University of Sudbury? Ian.
So we did put out a statement 2 days ago in regards to the University of Sudbury. The Conservatives are committed to $30 million per year to provide federal funding to minority Francophone post-secondary education institutions outside of Quebec. There is a pot of money there, and that's $30 million per year. We are committed to helping promote Francophone language. We're committed to help promoting the University of Sudbury, taking up that important programming in our community. And I think that our statement from 2 days ago speaks for itself.
Thank you. So just to paraphrase your answer in French for the original poster, il y a eu le gouvernement fédéral conservatif a sorti avec un statement qui dit qu'il y a 30 millions de fonds qui sont là pour supporter l'éducation bilingue, incluant l'éducation ici à Sudbury. Donc, c'est sûr que c'est ça leur position sur cette question. Merci.
Thank you. So the next question is to Ms. Lapointe. Several business owners that I know are unable to get employees to come back to work because they can collect CERB. They are not all minimum wage jobs. Trust me. How will a Liberal government resolve this?
So first of all, the federal government, our goal is to get all Canadians back to work. We lost 640,000 jobs during the pandemic, and we now have set a goal to create 1 million new jobs. The federal government supports, including CERB, the wage subsidy, the red supplements, allowed Canadians to come out of the pandemic in good shape. These programs saved millions of Canadian businesses from bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy, and business bankruptcy. In fact, as I've said before, I've spoken to many small business owners who made it clear that the wage subsidy saved their business, and many of them even want it to continue. So I can tell you that also a true testament to the efforts of the Liberal government is that bankruptcy rates did not rise during the pandemic. So before the pandemic, there was a labor shortage, and there's still a labor shortage today, which is why growing our growth-based immigration is so very important. And those types of incentives and programs will continue. We will invest in them in a greater degree to help address that labor shortage.
Thank you. A question for Dr. Robinson. Could you please speak to the paradox of the environmental impact related to the mining requirements in manufacturing batteries and the disposal of various types of batteries that will be in abundance in our landfill sites once the internal combustion engine is banned from being used?
Okay, and this is a really sensible question. Moving away from internal combustion engines, and especially doing it fast, means that we're moving into something that does less damage, but it still does damage. So what's the news? Well, the battery problem solves itself because it's such an expensive set of resources that there are already over 100 companies working on various kinds of recycling systems. Honestly, as an economist, I think that one will solve itself pretty fast as soon as there's enough electric vehicles. It's not having enough electric vehicles, Ian, that is slowing it down. But what about the other things? What about the mining itself? Well, let's put it in proportion. For one thing, agriculture does 1,000 times more damage environmentally than mining does around the world. I know there's a few ugly scars. We in Sudbury know you can fix them. But if you've taken down all the forests and you've converted it to cornfields, just for an example, permanently, you've removed a huge amount of habitat permanently. It's agriculture that's destroying the world, not mining. So yeah, we have a lot to solve around here. And Sudbury has had an important role both in developing how to rehabilitate mining sites and in the work going forward on how to do that and how to mine safely. So honestly, although this is a real issue, it's not nearly as big as people worry about. And it's one we are developing solutions for very quickly. And we should be proud here in Sudbury because in fact, we are developing some of those solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. The next question is to Dr. Verrilli. Can you explain how the NDP will make life more affordable?
So what we're talking about here is getting out of the pandemic. We're talking about the recovery. And so the question becomes, who will pay for this pandemic? O'Toole and Trudeau want you to pay for this pandemic by cutting services and clawing back benefits. We want those who profited and continue to profit from the pandemic to pay. We want to tax the ultra rich. They are the ones whose wealth has increased by $78 billion, while 5.5 million Canadians lost their jobs and are still struggling. It was Trudeau and O'Toole that voted against the 1% tax on the wealth over 20 million. It was them who refused to tax companies that profited during the pandemic. They stood idly by while grocers clawed back the pandemic pay. Unions are still fighting this in grievances. The NDP ensures that the ultra-rich and corporations will pay their fair share. We will get rid of tax loopholes for corporations. And in turn, we will invest in services for working family and people. Because we all know when you invest in people, everybody wins. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burley. The next question is to Dr. Symington. Why are gas prices 10 to 15 cents per liter? I assume it's lower only 50 kilometers away.
Yeah, I think the gas prices have been an enigma for a long time. I think that our government is very tough on gouging. I don't have the inside information to know if that's a possibility here. I know that we have definitely some positions in our platform in regards to food prices and gouging of food and gouging of any corporations or price fixing. And we're going to stiffen penalties if businesses, entrepreneurs, or groups are caught doing these things. So we are pro-business, but we're also pro-competition. And we would like to make sure that consumers are the beneficiaries of our policies. And in this regard, again, I don't have the back information on that, but certainly we are going to take a tough stand on any potential price fixing or gouging.
Thank you. The next question is to Dr. Verrilli. Two First Nation chiefs recently endorsed the Liberal candidates instead of NDP MP Nikki Ashton right in front of Jagmeet Singh. Is this indicative of the support for the NDP among the Indigenous communities?
Thank you for the question. I did see that. No, I'm not concerned. In speaking to colleagues, friends here in the Indigenous community, they support our plan. And I believe that from what they tell me, they support the NDP plan in reconciliation. They believe that we are committed and we will be committed to reconciliation. So from my discussions with those in the community, they do support our plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. The next question is to Ms. Lapointe. What is your message to family members who have been affected by the opioid crisis? And what will your government do differently to ensure that the mental health of all of our citizens is taken care of?
So as a mother, whenever I drive down Paris Street and I see the white crosses, it is devastating. The opioid crisis has worsened, certainly, and has challenged every level of government, federal, provincial, and municipal. Since 2020, the Liberal government has invested $182 million in the Substance Use and Addictions Program to support a range of innovative approaches to harm reduction, treatment, and prevention at the community level. Right here in Sudbury, we invested and announced $7.4 million for a new transitional housing project. And that will be offering intensive services provided by Health Sciences North, the experts and the best resources that we have, with the goal of transitioning into permanent community housing. We also rolled out a rapid housing initiative. And so these are the kinds of collaborations between governments that will make a difference in communities like Sudbury. There's a lot of work to do. And as I said, it has challenged federal, provincial, and municipal governments. And we need to work closely with all three levels of government on this tragic challenge that's before us.
Thank you for that response. And thanks to the audience for all of the thought-provoking questions and to the candidates for their answers. We're now going to move on to the closing remarks from each of the candidates, and we'll be asking for comments in reverse alphabetical order. Again, you'll have 2 minutes for these final remarks. So starting with Dr. Verrilli, your closing remarks, please.
Thank you. People in Sudbury are ready for better. They are tired of seeing housing prices skyrocket out of reach of families. They are worried that despite the Liberals' carbon fee, large polluters are still driving up our GHG emissions. And with every season, they see extreme weather wreaking havoc on health and prosperity. They are done with broken promises and a government that sits idle while we lose jobs and opportunities. New Democrats stand up for this community in the ways that Liberals won't. We show up to the picket line while they fail to support striking steel workers. We fight for reconciliation while they take residential school survivors to court. We work to find solutions while they turn their back on the cost of living. We stand up for jobs and opportunity while they let our university sector collapse. We look to our MPs to lead. Leadership is more than recycling funding announcements at stage photo ops. Leadership is making choices that puts people first. It is telling that Trudeau made a quick stop here today and barely talked about Sudbury. He stood on University of Sudbury campus, made no specific commitments to help out that fledgling university, nor how his government would help Laurentian. Because for him, this is just a seat they might lose. However, when Sudbury was hurting, reeling from the LU cuts, uncertain of how it would affect our city, Jagmeet was there. He attended Zoom town halls, spoke out in Parliament, wrote to the PM to do something to help. New Democrats like Charlie Angus fought to have an emergency debate on effects of the collapse of LU. And the NDP got not one, but 2 special committee hearings on this. This is just one example. Jagmeet and the NDP have been and will be there for Sudbury. We know that this election is not just about politics, but about how people's lives and livelihoods. And we are ready to do the hard work.
Thank you, Dr. Verrilli. Dr. Symington, your 2 minutes, please, for your final remarks.
I didn't know we were allowed applause. What I would suggest is I have been knocking, and I've been thousands of doors now. We're in our thousands of doors. I am talking to everyone. People do want change. They want to change from the top. Not a slight on Vivian at all. They want to change from Mr. Trudeau, his policy and his stance and position that he puts forth to Canadians. And I think Sudburyans want to change beyond that. It's been a long time since we've had a conservative government in Sudbury. There's a major groundswell going on right now. You can't look around town without seeing a blue sign. Everyone is on board with this. We are becoming the party who is not just for the corporate elites like the Liberals are becoming. We're standing up for working Canadians. We want everyone who wants to work to be able to work, to have a fulfilling life, and those who can't work will support. We're in favor of social programs, but we need the economic drivers to fund them. We don't promise pie in the sky things. We're the only party who put forward a comprehensive plan early on in the game for all other parties to look at, review, change, beg, borrow, steal, criticize. We put it out there and we're standing behind it. And I encourage everyone in Sudbury to look at everybody's platforms and vote with what party serves your needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Symington. Dr. Robinson, your final remarks, please.
Okay, so the question for voters is why vote green? I'm a good candidate. Have a pretty solid record of community action here. Mining supply and services sector is something that I helped launch. I've built with my family one of the links to the Rainbow Roots Trail system. My daughter and I initiated the School of Architecture. And I know lots. I've taught environmental economics and public policy for 30 years. And I'm going to lose. I mean, I'm proud to be on this panel with these candidates because they're terrific. But why vote for somebody who's going to lose? Because you think the big issue that's being ignored by these candidates with their kind of namby-bamby policies on climate is the climate issue. And you want to say one thing to all of them. You want to say more. We want more. We have to have more action. If you get Nadia, that'll be great. She's terrific. If you get Vivian, she's really good. This is the first time I've seen her. She's really good. Either of them will make a fine representative. But you won't be giving a signal. You'll have voted for a grocery cart full of policies. Not at all clear what you're getting, and it's not neither of them are appreciably different from the grocery cart that my party has. The one difference is we are much more serious about the disaster that's coming, and it's coming faster than anybody realized. What a shock this last summer's been. So if you vote green, what you're saying is this is a swing riding. That's why Trudeau was here. That's why Singh was here, because this is a swing riding and it's important to both of them, just a little bit more. If we give 2% more votes to the Greens, the backroom players in both of those parties are going to say, hey, climate matters more than
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
And we have to steal some more green policy.
Thank you. All right, for the final remarks, Ms. Lapointe, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I want to again thank the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this debate today or tonight, and merci à tous ceux qui ont participé. I also want to thank the people that I've been talking to at the doorstep. So after a year and a half of being isolated and locked away in homes, it feels so good to get back out there. And the engagement with families and people and the dialogues that I've had with people at the doorstep is something that I greatly appreciate. And I want to thank people for answering that door and talking. The Liberal government has been here for Sudbury, and it will continue to be here for Sudbury. I want to remind you, and I'm going to go through a list of what the Liberal government has delivered for our community. We are now a fully funded and independent Fedmore. And I want to remind everyone that Northern Ontario has waited for this for decades, and this Liberal government delivered it. We took the $40 million budget that had been slashed, and we restored it, doubled it, and it's now at $100 million. We invested $100 million in community infrastructure, in transit improvements, in new and improved roads, in trails, in flood mitigation, and so much more. A lot of those bike paths that we see being built around our city is thanks to federal government funding. We invested $45 million for SEMI so that Sudbury's best and brightest can develop the mines of the future. $45 million for Metal Earth, the largest and most comprehensive mineral exploration program in the world. $35 million for Snow Lab so that world-class researchers from around the world can continue unlocking the secrets of the universe right here in Sudbury. $100 million in new capital and research funding for Sudbury's 3 post-secondary institutions, $50 million for La Place des Arts and other cultural amenities. There's so much more that we've done. $25 million for housing in Greater Sudbury, including seniors and people with disabilities. More than $10 million for Science North Dynamic Earth. The list goes on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Point. And thanks to all the candidates for their closing remarks tonight. In closing, I would like to thank you all, the candidates, for your participation tonight and your candid responses to the issues and questions that have been raised this evening. The Greater Sudbury Chamber of Commerce urges the voters of this community to exercise their option to vote on September 20th. We hope that tonight has helped you in becoming better informed about the issues and that you'll keep them in mind when casting your ballot. Thanks to everybody for joining us this evening. Have a great night.